"We need someone with enterprise experience for the next phase," Derek said, champagne glass in hand, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. The celebration around us continued uninterrupted. Toasts, laughter, the clink of glasses, while my world silently imploded. I stood there in the Chicago Skyline Lounge, stunned into silence as our chief executive officer effectively fired me at the very party celebrating the $20 million contract I had just secured. The contract that had saved Veltrix Optics from certain bankruptcy. "HR will be in touch about your severance," he added casually, as if discussing the weather rather than destroying 5 years of my career. Then he turned away to join the board members, leaving me alone with my untouched champagne. "I am Elena Morrison, Senior Client Strategist." Or I was, until approximately 30 seconds ago. At 39, I had devoted countless hours building relationships across continents, taking red-eye flights, and sacrificing personal milestones to bring this deal home. Tonight should have been my crowning achievement. Instead, I stood frozen, watching Derek introduce Bradley Thompson, my apparently more enterprise-experienced replacement, to our investors. I took a deep breath, set down my glass, and surveyed the room. No one was looking my way. The celebration of Veltrix's miraculous financial turnaround continued without a hitch, while I processed the fact that I was now disposable, expendable, a ladder to be kicked away once they'd reached the desired height. I thanked a few team members who had worked with me, careful not to reveal what had just happened. Then I slipped out before dessert was served, leaving through the service exit to avoid any awkward goodbyes. The night air hit me as I stepped onto the street, simultaneously sobering and clarifying. Chicago's downtown glowed around me, indifferent to my personal catastrophe. I hailed a cab, giving the driver my address while checking my phone. 3 missed calls from Natalie Wu, CEO of Orbison Digital, our new client. The client who had specifically requested me as project lead just this morning. The client who had no idea I'd just been let go. My phone buzzed again. Natalie calling. My finger hovered over the screen. I should let it go to voicemail. That would be the professional thing to do. Let Derek handle the fallout. But 5 years of relationship building made me hesitate. I had earned Natalie's trust through consistent honesty. Could I really start lying to her now? I answered the phone. "Elena, I've been trying to reach you. Just wanted to say congratulations again on the contract." Natalie's voice was warm, excited. A warning flashed in my mind. There was something I didn't know yet. Something important that was about to unfold. I felt it in my bones. I've always been a strategist by nature, even before it became my job title. Growing up in a family of 8 children taught me to plan ahead, anticipate needs, and recognize which battles were worth fighting. When my mother got sick, I was the one who created the care schedule, researched treatment options, and explained complex medical terms to my siblings. When she passed, I handled the arrangements while my father retreated into grief. I was 17. Those early lessons in crisis management served me well throughout my career. I rose quickly at Veltrix Optics, from marketing coordinator to client liaison to senior client strategist in just 7 years. I had a particular talent for understanding what clients needed, often before they knew themselves. That's how the Orbison Digital relationship began. 5 years ago, they were a promising startup with innovative technology but limited resources. I recognized their potential when others saw only risk. I convinced Derek to offer them favorable terms when everyone advised against it. "They're too small," the board had said. "Not worth the investment." But I saw Natalie's vision. I believed in her leadership. Most importantly, I recognized that we could grow together. Veltrix providing the specialized optical components her technology required, and Orbison pushing us to innovate beyond our comfort zone. For 5 years, I nurtured that relationship. I stayed up for 2 a.m. calls when Natalie was in Asia. I traveled to their offices monthly. I learned their business thoroughly enough to anticipate their needs. I protected them from Veltrix's occasional corporate heavy-handedness. When Orbison's breakthrough came, a revolutionary new augmented reality system requiring custom optics, I was the one who structured the massive deal that would benefit both companies. A $20 million contract that arrived just as Veltrix was facing a critical cash shortage following a failed product launch and manufacturing issues. My deal had saved the company, and my reward was termination. "Elena, are you still there?" Natalie's voice pulled me back to the present. "Yes, sorry," I replied, my mind racing. "Just stepped outside for some air. I wanted to tell you how excited our team is to have you leading this project. Your understanding of both the technical and business sides is why my board approved such a large commitment." My heart sank. Natalie had no idea what had just happened, and apparently Derek hadn't bothered to inform her about my replacement. "That's very kind," I managed, buying time as I weighed my options. "Actually, I just emailed the detailed requirements document to your team, with you copied. We're ready to move fast." I needed to make a decision, right now. Should I tell her the truth? Let Derek handle it? Or was there another option, one that might serve justice while protecting my future? "Natalie, there's something you should know," I began, stepping out of the taxi at my apartment building. "The celebration tonight wasn't just about the contract. There were some organizational changes announced as well." A pause. "What kind of changes?" I leaned against the stone facade of my building, gathering courage. "Derek has decided to replace me as lead on the Orbison project. They're bringing in someone with more enterprise experience." His words. The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "That's unacceptable," Natalie finally said, her voice hardening. "We signed this contract with the explicit understanding that you would be leading the implementation. Your expertise and understanding of our technology is irreplaceable." I closed my eyes, relief and vindication washing over me. "Thank you for saying that." "I'm not just saying it. I mean it. This changes everything." Her voice had taken on the steel edge I recognized from negotiations. "Do they understand that your involvement was a key condition of our agreement?" "I don't think so," I admitted. Derek seemed caught up in the celebration. He probably assumes the contract is secure regardless of who's managing it. Another silence. I could almost hear Natalie thinking. "Elena, I need to make some calls. Can we talk again first thing tomorrow?" "Of course," I agreed, though I wasn't entirely sure what my position would be by morning. After ending the call, I entered my apartment and kicked off my heels. The city lights twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, normally a view I cherished. Tonight, they seemed to mock my sudden professional freefall. I opened my laptop and began drafting 3 separate emails. One to Derek outlining my accomplishments and questioning the timing of this decision. One to Human Resources requesting formal documentation of my termination. And one to my network announcing my sudden availability for new opportunities. But I didn't send any of them. Not yet. Instead, I opened a bottle of wine and began reviewing the detailed project requirements Natalie had mentioned. The document was extensive. Hundreds of pages of technical specifications, timelines, and dependencies. I was one of perhaps 5 people at Veltrix who could truly understand its complexity. Bradley Thompson, my replacement, certainly wasn't one of them. My phone buzzed with a text from my colleague Olivia. "What happened? You disappeared from the party. Everything okay?" I stared at the message, considering how much to reveal. Olivia was trustworthy, but she also reported to Derek. Before I could decide, another text arrived. "Derek's been acting strange since you left. The board members pulled him aside. Something's happening." A cold smile formed on my lips. Natalie worked fast. Then came a third message that confirmed my suspicions. "Board is in emergency session in the conference room." Derek looks panicked. "What did you do?" I set my phone down without replying and took a sip of wine. The board was discovering what Derek should have known all along. I wasn't just a strategist, I was the relationship. And relationships once broken aren't easily fixed. For the first time since hearing Derek's dismissive words, I felt my confidence returning. The setback still stung, but now I sensed an opportunity forming, one that would either reinstate me with enhanced authority or catapult me to something better. Either way, Derek's champagne would soon taste very bitter indeed. Morning arrived with a vengeance. My phone vibrated itself nearly off the nightstand. 17 missed calls, 32 text messages, and 47 emails. Most were from Veltrix board members, executives, and the Human Resources Department. I ignored them all, focusing instead on my coffee and the email that had arrived at 6:07 a.m. from Natalie. "Elena, I've made my position clear to the Veltrix board. Call me when you're ready to discuss next steps." I smiled into my coffee cup. Veltrix's desperation was palpable, but I wasn't ready to engage yet. Let them stew in the consequences of Derek's impulsive decision. At precisely 9 a.m., my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Jacob Wells, chairman of the Veltrix board, looking harried in an expensive suit. "May I come in?" he asked, his usual confidence noticeably diminished. I gestured him inside, maintaining professional courtesy despite my inner satisfaction at his obvious discomfort. "Elena, I'll get straight to the point," Jacob began once we were seated. "There's been a terrible misunderstanding regarding your position." "A misunderstanding," I repeated flatly. "Is that what we're calling it when the CEO fires someone at the celebration of their biggest achievement?" Jacob winced. "Derek was premature in his communication with you. The board had not approved any staffing changes for the Orbison project." "Interesting." I kept my expression neutral. Yet he seemed quite confident while holding his champagne glass. He overstepped, significantly. Jacob's jaw tightened momentarily. "We've spent the night in emergency sessions after receiving multiple calls from Natalie Wu. She made it extremely clear that without you, there is no contract." And there it was, the nuclear option Natalie had deployed on my behalf, my leverage. "So Derek made a unilateral decision that jeopardized a $20 million contract," I summarized. "That seems like a significant leadership failure." Jacob's expression confirmed I'd hit the mark. "The board shares your concern." "And yet you're here instead of Derek," I observed. "Why isn't he apologizing himself?" Jacob shifted uncomfortably. "Derek is addressing other aspects of this situation." Translation: Derek was fighting for his job. "What exactly are you offering, Jacob?" "Full reinstatement as senior client strategist, with a substantial retention bonus, plus leadership of the Orbison implementation team, reporting directly to the board instead of through normal management channels." The offer was impressive, but incomplete. "And Bradley Thompson?" Jacob grimaced. "He'll be reassigned to another department." I took a slow sip of coffee, letting silence fill the space between us. Jacob began to fidget, a tell I'd observed in board meetings when he was anxious. "I'll need time to consider," I finally said. "Time is something we don't have," Jacob responded, his voice tightening. "Natalie has given us until noon to confirm your participation, or they begin reviewing their legal options for withdrawing." I raised an eyebrow. "So you need my answer in—" I checked my watch. 3 hours? "Ideally sooner." I stood up, signaling our conversation was ending. "I'll call you before noon." As I closed the door behind a clearly unsatisfied Jacob, my phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. "Derek cleaning out office. Board forcing resignation." Followed quickly by, "Confirmed. Derek out. Jacob acting as interim CEO." This changed everything. The board had moved even faster than I anticipated, eliminating the immediate problem of working with Derek after his betrayal. Their decisive actions suggested genuine remorse, or at least genuine fear of losing Orbison's contract. But as I stared at the succession of increasingly desperate messages filling my phone, another message arrived. This one from a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Morrison, I'm Thomas Blackwood, CEO of Crystalfin Audio. We should talk about your future. Lunch today? I believe we can offer something far more valuable than damage control. I felt a slow smile spread across my face. Now I had options. The restaurant Thomas Blackwood had chosen was discreet and elegant, a small Italian place in Chicago's financial district, where privacy was part of the premium pricing. As I was led to his table, I assessed the man who might represent my future. Thomas rose to greet me. Tall, around 50, with the confident bearing of someone accustomed to getting what he wanted. Crystalfin Audio was Veltrix's most formidable competitor, specializing in acoustic optical technologies that complemented many of the same markets. Elena Morrison, he said, extending his hand. Your reputation precedes you. Thank you for making time on such short notice. We exchanged pleasantries as the waiter brought water and took drink orders. Once we were alone again, Thomas leaned forward. I'll be direct. We've been watching your work with Orbison Digital for some time. The contract you secured is impressive, not just for its value, but for the strategic positioning it creates. I nodded, curious where this was heading. Veltrix doesn't deserve you, he continued. What Derek did was unconscionable, and the board scrambling doesn't erase it. You seem well informed about Veltrix's internal matters, I observed. Thomas smiled. Chicago's technology circle is small, and news travels fast, especially news involving $20 million contracts and CEOs being ousted. My phone vibrated in my purse, likely Jacob, growing increasingly desperate as noon approached. I ignored it. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. Executive Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Crystalfin. Double your current salary, significant equity, and a seat on our executive committee. The offer was stunning, far beyond what I had expected. That's very generous. It's not generosity, it's strategy, Thomas corrected. We want the relationship you've built with Orbison. We want your ability to structure complex deals. Most importantly, we want to deny these assets to Veltrix. There it was, the real motivation. Hiring me would be both an acquisition and a strategic blow to their competitor. And if Orbison doesn't follow me to Crystalfin? I asked, testing his commitment. Then we've still acquired an exceptional strategist, and Veltrix has still lost one. He slid a folder across the table. The formal offer. The signing bonus alone should compensate for any short-term disruption. I opened the folder, and my breath caught. The signing bonus was 7 figures. This is compelling, I admitted, closing the folder. But there are complexities to consider. Such as your obligation to Natalie Wu, Thomas nodded. I understand loyalty. It's part of why we want you. Take the afternoon to consider. We'll need your answer by end of day. My phone vibrated again. Jacob's 5th call in the past hour. I checked my watch. 11:40 a.m. Veltrix's deadline was approaching. I appreciate the opportunity, I said, standing to leave with the folder. You'll have my answer. Back in my apartment, I laid out my options. Veltrix was offering reinstatement with a direct line to the board, a significant upgrade in authority. Crystalfin was offering an executive position with compensation that would take years to match at Veltrix. But the element complicating both offers was Natalie and Orbison. I had personally assured her of Veltrix's capabilities and commitment. My word was on the line. I picked up my phone and called the one person whose perspective I needed. Natalie, it's Elena. Do you have a moment? For you? Always, she answered. Has Veltrix begged sufficiently yet? Jacob came to my apartment this morning. Derek's been removed. Good, Natalie said firmly. That's the minimum acceptable outcome. I've also received an offer from Crystalfin Audio, I said, watching the city through my window. Executive Vice President. Significant package. Silence for a moment. And if you accepted? It would mean asking you to reconsider your partnership, I acknowledged. New terms, new company. Another pause. The question is, what do you want, Elena? It was the right question, one I'd been avoiding. What did I want? Revenge against Veltrix? The prestige of an executive title? Or something else entirely? I'm not sure, I admitted, but I need to decide within the hour. Then let me help you clarify, Natalie said. I have a third option you haven't considered. By the time noon struck, I had made my decision. I called Jacob first. Elena, thank God. We're up against the deadline. What's your answer? His voice carried the strain of a man whose career might hinge on my response. I'm declining your offer, Jacob. A sharp intake of breath. Elena, please reconsider. Whatever Crystalfin offered, we'll match it. So he knew about my lunch with Thomas. The technology circle was indeed small. This isn't about compensation, I explained. It's about recognition and respect. Something that should have come before the crisis, not after it. We can address those concerns, Jacob promised desperately. Just don't leave us hanging with Orbison. I've already spoken with Natalie. She's aware of my decision. Silence, then. So we've lost the contract. His voice was flat with defeat. Not necessarily. Call Natalie yourself. She'll explain the conditions under which Orbison might still work with Veltrix. I ended the call and immediately dialed Thomas. Elena, he answered smoothly. I hope you're calling with good news. I appreciate your offer, Thomas, but I'm declining. Unlike Jacob, Thomas didn't immediately protest. May I ask why? If it's the compensation, we have flexibility. It's not the money, it's the positioning. You're offering me a role where my value is defined by what I cost Veltrix. That's not sustainable. Thomas chuckled softly. Perceptive and correct. What's your alternative? Something more aligned with my long-term interests. Intriguing. Well, the door remains open should your new path not meet expectations. I thanked him and hung up, then opened my laptop to draft the most important email of my career. A resignation letter to Veltrix's board, effective immediately. Within the hour, my doorbell rang again. This time, it was Natalie. Are you sure about this? She asked as I welcomed her inside. Absolutely, I confirmed, pouring us both coffee. Though it's not without risk. The best decisions rarely are, she smiled, setting a leather portfolio on my coffee table. The incorporation papers are ready. Once you sign, OptiBridge Consulting officially exists. This was the third option Natalie had proposed, starting my own consulting firm, with Orbison as my first client. The contract would be restructured. Veltrix would still provide the components, but I would manage the implementation independently. The board at Veltrix is in chaos, Natalie reported. Jacob called me immediately after speaking with you. I laid out the new terms. They keep the manufacturing contract only if they agree to work with OptiBridge as the implementation partner. And, I prompted, they're desperately reviewing the legal implications, but they'll agree. They have no choice. I signed the incorporation papers, feeling the weight of the decision. I was now a business owner, not just a strategist. The risks were substantial, but so was the potential. There's one more thing, Natalie said, pulling out another document. Orbison is prepared to provide seed funding for OptiBridge in exchange for a minority stake. Enough capital to hire a small team immediately. I stared at the proposal, momentarily speechless. This wasn't just a new job. It was a complete transformation of my career trajectory. Why are you doing this? I asked finally. Natalie's expression grew serious. Because talent like yours shouldn't be at the mercy of people like Derek. Because I believe you'll build something remarkable. And, she smiled, because it's good business. We get the expertise we need while investing in a promising venture. As I signed the investment agreement, I reflected on how dramatically my circumstances had changed in just 24 hours. From terminated to business owner. From employee to partner. Derek's champagne toast now seemed like a distant memory, the inadvertent catalyst for something far more significant than a mere corporate position. Sometimes, being underestimated is the greatest advantage of all. 3 months later, I stood in OptiBridge's new offices in downtown Chicago, watching my team of 12 consultants working on projects for 4 different clients. The seed funding from Orbison had allowed me to recruit top talent from across the industry, including, to my particular satisfaction, Olivia from Veltrix, who now led our technical integration team. The Orbison implementation was proceeding flawlessly under our guidance, with Veltrix grudgingly fulfilling their manufacturing obligations according to the renegotiated contract. Their margins were significantly reduced from the original agreement, a financial consequence that had further destabilized their leadership after Derek's departure. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Board meeting successful. Additional funding approved for Phase 2. Dinner to celebrate? I smiled and confirmed. Orbison was thriving with our partnership, already discussing expansion beyond the initial contract scope. The trust I had built with Natalie was proving more valuable than ever. My assistant knocked on my office door. "Elena, Jacob Wells is here to see you. No appointment." I raised an eyebrow. The last I'd heard, Jacob had been struggling as interim CEO at Veltrix. "Send him in." Jacob looked noticeably older than when I'd last seen him, stress evident in the new lines around his eyes. "Thank you for seeing me," he said, declining my offer of a seat. "I'll be brief. Veltrix is considering a strategic reorganization, and the board has authorized me to explore all options." "What kind of options?" I asked, though I suspected the answer. "Acquisition, by OptiBridge." I nearly laughed at the irony. "You want me to buy the company that fired me?" Jacob winced. "The board recognizes the unfortunate history, but Veltrix has valuable manufacturing capabilities that would complement your consulting services. The valuation would be reasonable." "Reasonable meaning significantly discounted from 3 months ago," I observed. Jacob didn't deny it. "We've lost several key clients following the Orbison restructuring. Our stock has adjusted accordingly." I allowed myself a moment to savor the completeness of this reversal. The company that had dismissed me was now effectively offering itself to me at a bargain price. "Leave the proposal," I said. "I'll review it with my team." The acquisition proposal sat on my desk for a week while I conducted due diligence. Veltrix's situation was worse than Jacob had admitted. They were hemorrhaging talent, struggling with production delays, and facing a significant cash shortfall by quarter's end. Yet their manufacturing infrastructure remained valuable, and properly managed, could become a significant asset for OptiBridge. The vertical integration possibilities were compelling from a business perspective. I called Natalie to discuss the opportunity. "It's poetic justice," she said after I explained. "But is it good business?" "With the right restructuring, yes," I responded. "Their optical manufacturing complements our strategic consulting. We could offer end-to-end solutions that neither Veltrix nor OptiBridge can provide independently. And the board that approved your termination?" "Would be dissolved upon acquisition," I confirmed. "New leadership, new direction." Natalie was quiet for a moment. "You've come full circle, then. From being discarded by Veltrix to becoming its owner." "If we proceed," I cautioned. "I'm still evaluating options." After ending the call, I reviewed the detailed valuation analysis my financial team had prepared. The numbers supported acquisition at the proposed price, but something felt unresolved. I opened my laptop and searched for news about Derek. According to industry publications, he had landed at a small startup in Austin, a significant step down from his previous position. His dismissal from Veltrix had damaged his reputation, limiting his options. Part of me had expected to feel more satisfaction at his downfall. Instead, I felt strangely detached. Derek had been the catalyst for my current success, albeit unintentionally. Without his short-sighted decision, OptiBridge wouldn't exist. I closed the search and turned back to the acquisition proposal. The revenge narrative no longer seemed relevant. This wasn't about getting back at Veltrix or Derek. It was about building something meaningful from an unexpected opportunity. The next morning I called Jacob with my decision. OptiBridge will acquire Veltrix with conditions, I informed him. The manufacturing division remains intact, but will restructure management completely. Jacob sounded relieved. The board expected as much. They'll accept reasonable terms. One more thing, I added. I want the champagne flutes from the celebration party 3 months ago. The champagne flutes? Jacob sounded confused. Yes, the ones used for toasting when I was let go. Consider it a personal memento. A symbolic request, perhaps, but meaningful to me. Those glasses had witnessed both my professional low point and the beginning of my transformation. They would serve as a reminder that endings often conceal new beginnings. Jacob agreed without further question, likely relieved the demands weren't more severe. As I hung up, I looked out at the growing OptiBridge team. We were about to expand dramatically, integrating Veltrix's manufacturing capabilities with our strategic consulting. The challenges would be substantial, but so was our potential. The journey from that painful night to this moment of triumph had been swift and unexpected. Derek's dismissive words, "We need someone with enterprise experience," now seemed laughably myopic. I had built an enterprise from scratch in just 3 months, one that was now powerful enough to acquire his former company. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't about getting even. It's about moving forward so decisively that the past becomes irrelevant. As I watched my team, I realized I no longer needed Veltrix's champagne glasses to remind me of how far I'd come. I was writing a new story now, one that no longer featured Derek as the villain. Instead, I would focus on the future, my company, my vision, my success. That was the true victory.